Hey everybody, welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm Michael Noland, and tonight we're going to talk about the rock band Yes. They've got a brand new album out, Mirror to the Sky. And we're going to ask the question, is this album good, bad, or just plain sad? All right, I got to admit, when I first saw the whole package of this album, I kind of thought to myself, what the hell kind of album is this? I mean, it has enough material for 3 sides of a double album and 1 side too many for a single album. Was this an album proper that came with some freebie bonus discs, or was this 9 tracks that fit together like an album? All right, so with that in mind, I also want to stress that Yes has said this is a theme album, not so much a concept album, and I totally disagree with them, and it may be due to the packaging. Now, when I think of themed albums, I always think of Frank Sinatra, right? He was known to put out themed albums, and that was considered a rather forward step in album production at the time. He would build a theme like a gentleman having cocktails late night with a young and pretty gal, and all of the songs would more or less fit that theme. It would have a feel. He made sure that the orchestration would have a feel for that album. So when Yes tells us on one hand the album proper is Mirror to the Sky with 6 tracks carrying on a theme, these 6 tracks go way beyond a general theme. These 6 tracks are a question mark. It is little us, little finite us, looking at the almost immortal universe and questioning whether or not we are special. And guess what? They even provide some answers to that question in the lyrics. That's a concept album, folks. But you know what? No matter how you cut it, one thing is for sure. When you listen to this album, you take a look at the songwriting credits and who's responsible for lyrics and everything. All I can say is Steve Howe is on one hell of a roll, folks. His playing is impeccable on this album. His compositions, whether co-written or alone, are wonderful. He's even the producer of this album. You see, if there is a weakness on this album in general, it is the lack of punch, the lack of keyboards that have always played a predominant role with Yes, and the way that they recorded this whole approach. I'll give you an example. Anything recorded by Yes with the following personnel is absolute gold. No, not just gold, but absolute platinum material, in my opinion. Those members, of course, Jon Anderson, Bill Bruford, Chris Squire, Steve Howe, and Rick Wakeman. And if you go back to those recordings, when each member is playing a key riff or whatever, they'd slide that sucker up into the mix when they decided to mix that album. If Rick Wakeman was on a tear, they'd bring him up right into the mix. It was part of the Yes sound. And if Mirror to the Sky has any weakness at all, it's that occasional punch. Now, I say that with the exception of sometimes the drumming and the amazing bass playing that's going on this album. Yes, he's not Chris Squire. Chris Squire, one of the top 3 bass players in rock and roll, in my opinion, but he has taken Chris Squire's style as well as writing new bass lines for the newest material, and guess what? He sounds like Chris Squire. Even the tonality of that bass sounds like Chris Squire. Those high-end trebles that, to me, Chris Squire brought into rock and roll. I mean, he's the guy that's responsible for what some people call lead guitar bass players, you know? But I've never seen him as that. He is a team player in his playing, and yet you're always aware. Even a casual listener, someone who doesn't play an instrument, wouldn't be able to tell you what a bass guitar is, right? They would know that bass was in there. So we do get punch on this album, but when you talk about the keyboards and even the lead vocals at time, and I think that's because his style, although it can mimic Jon Anderson, it's not his natural style, and he really is fighting to get some of those notes. A great singer, there's no doubt about it. I have no problem with his singing, but what came naturally to Jon, and you could hear his voice staying just as strong in the higher registers, and I don't hear it too much on this album. All right, so not an unblemished album by any stretch of the imagination, but you know what? That's all right with me, folks. I love blemishes on albums. It's what makes us human, you know? No AI involved. It's the stutter of human creativity that I love. So in the end, that wouldn't stop this album from being a classic in rock and roll, if indeed it is that. So I'm gonna go down a list here, folks, and it's a list that I did rating each and every track on this album, including the bonus tracks, and I'm giving them a 1 to 5-star rating. All right, so first of all, you guys already know what I think about the first 2 cuts on the album. Cut from the Stars, All Connected. I think they're both 5-star songs. I've done a video on each of these tracks already. You guys know I love these 2 cuts. But the rest of the album, up until now, has been a bit of a mystery, hasn't it? So when I heard track 3, I was pleasantly surprised. I gave it a 4 out of 5-star rating. It's not quite up to the level of the first 2 tracks, but folks, when I give somebody a 4-star rating, that is still par excellence in my book. And so I was not disappointed at this point in the album. As a matter of fact, it's this track that lets you settle down into the album. I was getting a little concerned with the next track. Again, another excellent track, another 4-star, and of course I'm talking about Living Out Their Dream. The reason I gave it a 4-star is, again, there's a lack of presence on these tracks that just kind of dampen the feel for me just a bit. But other than that, again, 4 stars, folks. They're wonderful recordings, and if the whole album had been 4-star, I would have bought it. Now it's with track 5, and we're getting toward the end of this album. We've got 2 5-stars and 2 4-stars, and the title track is up next, Mirror to the Sky. And phew, what can I say? Another 5-star track, which brings us to the conclusion of the album, right? The proper Mirror to the Sky portion of this release. And of course, I'm talking about Circles of Time, and I gave it a 3. Now, a rating of 3 shouldn't alarm you, folks, because if I give somebody 3 out of my stars, you've got a good, solid track right there. So dividing up those stars and everything, that would probably come to a total close to 4 stars. I'm going to give the album proper 4.5 stars, folks, and that's because of the whole concept of the damn thing, all right? That is nearly a perfect album. When we get to the bonus discs, it's curious here. All of these tracks are written by Steve Howe and Steve Howe alone. Of course, I'm talking about the tracks Unknown Place, 1 Second Is Enough, and Magic Potion. And I gave all 3 of these tracks a 4-star rating. So, you know, as a total package, folks, I would have to give this whole release, you know, the whole release, all 9 tracks, 4 3/4 stars at least. Now think about that. For 2023, especially when you consider the last 5 to 7 years of releases, this has been a good year, almost a bumper year. Of course, back in the day, this would have been a bumper week. We got at least 3 classic albums by whoever we were listening to every single week on Billboard. But then was then, and now is now. And you know what? In recent rock history, we haven't seen this strong of an output by various artists so far than we have this year. Of course, I'm talking about this album, Mirror to the Sky by Yes, as well as Rock Flute by Jethro Tull and 72 Seasons by Metallica, which leads us to the elephant in the room. And my next question for the tribe, is this even really a Yes album? Well, let's take a look at what it has to offer. What we know is Yes. The album cover is by Roger Dean. There's some pedigree to it. As well, of course, the Yes logo, the brand. We have Steve on guitar. All right, he's in my classic lineup, and not much else, really, if you think about it, or at least according to some of the hardcore Yes fans. What's missing? Well, for one thing, we're missing the soul of the band. Chris Squire passed away. If there's one member in this band that was always there to be counted upon, it was Chris Squire. He was the soul. In my opinion, Bill Bruford was the backbone, the skeletal structure of this band. But when Alan White took over, you know what? He had a lot to offer this band, and I'm a big fan of his, and he became the new backbone to this band, and he's missing. The impeccable and strong vocals of Jon Anderson is missing, as well as Jon Anderson's lyrics. And the keyboards, as I've said before, do not even come close to what Rick Wakeman offered this band. And yet, the visual look of this album looks like a Yes album. The sound of this album sounds like Yes for the most part. And the strength of this album calls that very question into question, doesn't it? So I really want to hear from you guys with this question especially. All right, if you enjoyed the video tonight, please consider giving it a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algo dragon better, get that video out there to more viewers, and that helps with channel growth. And if you're one of my viewers that haven't subscribed to the channel as of yet, that's easy. All you have to do is hit that subscribe to the tribe button, see what I did there, and then tap that top bell icon, and you'll be notified of all my future videos. Don't forget, I just announced my Patreon. I saw that I have at least one Patreon who has signed up. I haven't gotten on it, buddy, yet, but you know what? When I do, you'll get your shout out. It's coming. All right, so time for the sign off. I'm Michael Noland. This is The Bottom Line, or at least as I see it. And together, folks, you and I, we are the tribe. I'll see you in my next video.